Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this next episode in our Let's Talk About series. Today we're going to be talking about camo. Before we begin, I just want to thank you so much for all your questions and your support and your positive feedback on these videos. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer on video, please leave them in the comments below. As well, if you'd like to support our channel in a more direct way, we are selling merch. You can see our offerings at the bottom of this video, so feel free to support us that way. And if there's any kind of merch that you'd like to see us have, let us know in the comments as well. So today I'm here with John. We're going to be talking a little bit about camo as it relates to airsoft, and what we found is some of the really good camo that we've seen out there for our use. When we were talking about doing this video, we were watching a lot of content from YouTubers like Brent0331, where they talk about camouflage effectiveness in great detail, right? And you get to see it sort of in action. And we got to thinking around, well, what actually is the best camo for our environment? So, we had started wearing Multicam years and years ago, and then we moved to M81 Woodland because it does look really nice. But the question is, is that the most effective camo? So John and I got to talking. We were talking with Patrick as well. And we figured, okay, well, we're going to do a little bit of a test to see what works best. And we're going to get to that a little bit about halfway through the video. But first off, we want to talk with John, who has been a student of a lot of different types of camo for a couple of years. Just want to talk a little bit with you about what camouflage actually is. Because lots of people think, if you get good camo, it's like a cloaking device and you just become invisible. And there's a lot of misconceptions around that, right?
Definitely. Well, first, right out of the gate, I'm going to say camouflage does not make you invisible. It just merely blends you into your environment that you're operating in.
Yeah.
And that's plain and simple. That's what camouflage is, and that's the sole purpose of it, just to blend in. It's not an invisibility cloak. It's not Harry Potter, but
Yeah. And it's not really meant as well to completely shield you by itself, right? It's meant to be used in concert with other things, right?
Yep. Natural foliage is probably the best camouflage on the market. It's free. All you have to do is just go out and pick it up. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of ways, like we have that helmet video where we just scrimmed up one of the helmets up there. And then what we did, and you're going to see, we took an elastic helmet band and we just kind of put that on taut, and we got some grass, some branches, just natural foliage that we found in our environment, and we just stockpiled it on. Best camouflage by far. Like I said, it's free. Mm-hmm. So take advantage of it. It is the best. And a lot of these, you'll see some Russian, especially in German, early German camouflage patterns, have these foliage loops. Right on the shoulders usually, sometimes on helmet covers. Like most fast helmet covers, they have foliage loops. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So what that is meant to do is exactly like the helmet band, and it's exactly like helmet netting, where you just take natural foliage and you just thread it through, and you just add that extra bit of camouflage straight to your uniform.
So you have a lot of guys who, especially if you're starting out airsoft, likely, your first game, you might be wearing either, jeans and a hoodie, which we see a lot, and that's totally fine. Oh, yeah. That's your first game. Or you might, decide to invest a little bit more, so you go to your local army surplus and you pick up some camo and you wear that. Mm-hmm. But quickly thereafter, you're looking at different patterns of camo, thinking and seeing what's really popular right now. I know when we started the team, multicam was all the rage, so all the big teams were wearing multicam, so we wore multicam, right? A couple of years ago, Cryptek Highlander came out, and everyone was wearing Cryptek Highlander or multicam black or all this kind of stuff. So there's a popularity aspect to it, but the reality is, not every camouflage is going to be effective for every environment, and it's not really meant to be. Like even a camo like Multicam, which in the name implies it's camo for multiple environments, is still not going to be effective everywhere, right?
Exactly. You can't. The thing about nature is you can't really paint it with one brush. There's different elements, like there's snow, so there's snow camouflage. There's arid camouflage for the desert, and you have AOR2. You have Multicam, which is super effective in desert environments and fall environments. Mm-hmm. And then you get the natural spring, summer, and fall and winter. All these seasons, they provide their own unique color palette that certain camouflage patterns do not work in, and some work really well. But there's no one trick pony when it comes to camouflage. Quite frankly, you have to have a wide array if you want to be effective in all sorts of terrain. Mm-hmm. That's why militaries outfit their armies with multiple camouflage patterns. Like some German patterns and Russian patterns are reversible, so you have like a summer side and then you have an autumn side. And then over top of that you could get issued a winter parka. So there's different elements all kind of moving towards making you the most effective over the longest period of time.
Yeah. And fundamentally, I think it's important for everyone to understand, when you're wearing camouflage, what are you trying to achieve? So I think, first of all, if you're trying to look cool and you're going for a particular impression, or there's a particular pattern that you really like, fill your boots. We're not saying don't use that, but if you want your camouflage to be effective, there's certain things you should be looking for, right?
Definitely.
And so the number one thing, and I think as you'll see sort of in the multiple clips that we shot, you have to make sure that your camouflage is at least moderately tailored to your environment that you're playing in. And one camouflage will likely not suit your whole environment all year long, right?
Definitely.
Because in the summer, like for example, where we live, we're in the Canadian woodlands. So we have a lot of dark greens. We have a lot of coniferous trees compared to if you're playing in Arizona or you're playing in Southern Europe. It's going to be very different, right?
Definitely. And I mean, you'll see behind us, you'll see a wide array of camouflages, but you'll see one common thread, except for this Taz 83, in which they're green dominant. And aside from looking cool, they're super effective for where we operate during the summer. So when the airsoft season is at its highest peak, these camouflages, except for the Taz 83, it just looks cool, are super effective. And you'll see that throughout the video.
There's another piece with camouflage, which is the utilization of it. So, I mean, if you are a real soldier, for example, and you go through infantry school, you are taught how to utilize your camo, and you're taught the things that are important about concealing yourself to the naked eye. So the first thing that, we need to be aware of in airsoft is, in general, we will be engaging other players much, much, much closer than camouflage is intended to be effective at. Right? We're engaging people who are 30 meters, 50 meters, let's say 100 meters away on the outside, when certain camouflage patterns, and I would say most, are designed to conceal infantrymen in platoons at distances of 300 meters, 500 meters, a kilometer away. And so the level of, I guess, achievable concealment from your camouflage when you're in airsoft is going to be different too, Definitely. Right?
So yeah, on that note, that's where you see kind of the advantages of having camouflage as to not having camouflage. One of the first tests that we did was, how does a black hoodie fare? And we're going up. The camera's not that far away from where we were positioned. So I mean, they're at pretty average distances that sometimes close on skirmishes will, lend themselves to. So you'll see it emerging from cover from a tree. You'll see how effective that black sweater is. Not effective, but something more along the lines of like OD or Fleck Turn, or just U.S. Desert Night Camo. You'll see that these different camouflages offer unique characteristics that blend themselves to the environment that we're operating in. Not acting as an invisibility cloak, just acting as a buffer before you're out far enough for the enemy to see you. So you can delay that time from taking contact just by that fraction of a second maybe.
Operating at those really close distances, again, your eyes is going to be attracted to movement, right? So if people are moving around, that's going to be a lot more important than the type of camo that you're wearing. That being said, if you are looking to change the camo that you're wearing, maybe you want to, get something new or change your pattern or what have you, the first thing you want to be aware of is what is really going to suit your environment. Again, if you're looking for your camouflage to be effective, if you're going for the cool guy factor, different conversation. But if you want your camo to be effective, the first thing you really need to do is try and match it to your environment. And, generally speaking, the countries and armies develop camouflages that work well in their own environments first. So in the Canadian Army, they wear the Canadian disruptive pattern. That works generally very well in Canadian environments. The M81 Woodland, American camouflage, is designed primarily for the American woodland. So that's always a good place to start. And that's sort of where we were at when we started looking at this experiment, right? It's what is really going to be the most effective camo for our environment, and what can we do to try and figure out which ones are going to be the most effective. So what we did, as you'll see in some of these clips coming up on the screen, we picked a variety of different patterns. Some patterns that we knew would be good, some patterns that we suspected would be good, some patterns we knew would be bad, some patterns we didn't actually know what to expect really. And we also tried 2 planes. So we did a black and we did an olive drab, just as a bit of a control. Now, nothing about what we did was scientific, but we just tried to be consistent and give every type of camo that we tested out a fair shot. So our first thing that we looked at black, right? So you're new to airsoft, you're coming out, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm obviously not going to wear a yellow hoodie unless you're a speed softer, in which case, Godspeed you. But you're probably wearing a black hoodie. You might have a green hoodie at home, so you wear that. What did that look like? And actually, not too bad, right?
No, I mean, it worked well. We kind of utilized the available camouflage of the black and kind of just put ourselves in a shaded environment on a cloudy day. So, I mean, it did work. It wasn't great. It wasn't anything to write home about, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And when you're looking at this clip, like, what do you see?
Yeah.
Right? Primarily. Is it the black hoodie? No. Yeah. It's John's hands, right? John's hands, John's face. That's what we see a lot. So when you're wearing different kinds of camo, you really want to be mindful of your skin tone as well, right? So if you have a light skin tone, it's something that you really will want to cover up generally to keep yourself as blended in as possible.
Definitely.
We tried some olive drab, similar result, right?
Yep. Oh, I mean, that one fared even better because where we operate in a primarily green dominant environment worked. It's olive drab. It's been used since the 40s. It's going to be continued to be used. It's effective. It's super cheap, and I mean you can just wear it outside of the airsoft field as well.
Exactly.
But that I knew going into it, having done a lot of Second World War reenactment, that olive drab is effective, and you can employ different methods to improve that camouflage.
Right. Then we started looking at more. Of actual surplus patterns. So we looked at woodland, which was pretty effective.
Definitely.
We looked at flecktarn, which I'm wearing, which was actually very surprisingly effective for our particular environment at this time of the year.
Yep.
We looked at some World War II patterns as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the patterns that you guys are going to see on screen?
Yeah, so we did 3 Second World War patterns. We did pattern 42 windproof camouflage pattern, which is a British camouflage. It's green dominant, brown, and a bit of stone gray. I was kind of on the fence about it because I'd never worn that out in the field yet. And that proved to be really effective in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a super effective camouflage just because it was that green. And on a sunny day, I expect that green would really blend in. We also did a hand-painted first pattern Denison smock. So that one, it's a kind of a yellow khaki base color with... brown, 2 shades of green, really not effective.
Yeah, definitely. That was a surprise too. We expected it to be better than it was.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be all right, but it was in the brush. The yellow kind of just takes your eye and kind of ruins the camouflage. But it's historically accurate, so I mean that's points in my book.
Yeah.
And the third pattern we did was a German reversible pattern. So it was a splinter, I think A variant. So it's the blurred instead of the harsh lines of the splinter A. With the raindrop pattern integrated into it. Mm-hmm. Really, really effective. I knew it was going to be probably one of the top contenders, if not the best. Mm-hmm. We didn't really see eye to eye on that thing being the best, but it was super effective, and I can rely on it to blend myself in when I need it in a pinch.
Yeah, absolutely. We also tried Multicam, and Multicam we knew from our own personal experience at this time of the year would be garbage.
Yeah.
We were not surprised. If you look at the video, it's like you're looking at a lighthouse in the middle of the forest. It's very, didn't really work.
Definitely.
We also tried Taz 83, also known as Alpenflage, or what is it?
Pietertown or Liebermeister.
Yeah, we picked this one because it's very unique. There's not many camos that are like that. And we wondered whether or not it could potentially be effective in our environment. And as you will see, it most certainly isn't. It's really cool, but it's not. It wasn't really where we wanted it to be.
Yeah, I would not depend on that to conceal me in any way, shape, or form. The reds, sometimes they turn into browns. Not in this case. It just looks like red on a cloudy day. Mm. So not effective whatsoever.
The last pattern that we looked at was Desert Night Camo, or DNC. It's a pretty what I would call a Gucci pattern. People wear it just because it looks cool. The reality is, I mean, it's an olive drab pattern, and it was as effective as olive drab. Probably one of our top contenders, actually, towards the end at this particular time of year.
We also did one more. If you remember, we did DPM, so British Disruptive Material.
That's right.
I thought personally that it was going to be, just due to the color components, that it was similar to M81 in that it's a woodland type pattern, similar type camouflage scheme, so the way the colors kind of are printed onto the fabric are similar, but they're British, so they have that kind of tinge to them. But what we found in this 90s model of the DPM was the base tan color not that effective. It kind of gave it away. So the British, I mean, except for the Pattern 42 windproof, I mean, they're not scoring high in our books.
No, that's right. If you were to stop this video right now and you were thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to use to base my camouflage, methodology on, what you would probably take away from this is, all right, well, you need to do something similar in your environment, right? Figure out where you play, put some camo on, try it in that environment and see like what works, what doesn't work. But I think overall, out of all of this, is that none of the camos that you wear are going to be very, very effective in an airsoft setting unless you also take other measures to conceal yourself. So what we then did is we picked the camouflage patterns that we thought were the most effective. So we excluded, the Alpenflage, may it rest in peace, and the other ones, and focused really on the ones we thought were pretty effective for our environment. And then we took steps to conceal our hands, so we put gloves on. And just to be fair to all of them, and so for full transparency, we used the same gloves, just a set of M81 mechanics gloves. We use the same gloves for all of them, and then we also put on some sort of helmet or head covering to try and reduce the amount of glare in the head. Then we tried those camouflage patterns in the same areas, and you can see the results. Like side by side, it makes a tremendous amount of difference.
Definitely.
Areas where, you could see movement previously, you can't, right? And I mean, you can talk about that a bit, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to piggyback off what was said earlier in the helmet camouflage video, there's really something to be said about taking that time, scrimming up a boonie cap or a helmet. Modern fast helmets have mechanisms inside of them that allow bungees to be fastened to them, which act as nets. So you can, like Chris has done up here in that helmet, he has spray painted some burlap, fed it through, and he cut up some M81 fabric and also thread that through. That's super effective. We used that helmet over there. The color scheme you'll notice is different from the video. There's a lot of tans, there's a lot of orangey browns, and due to that, after seeing the footage that we shot and how ineffective it was, I took it out and I just left it green and brown dominant. So that's just one measure. Later on, what we did, we used cork. And cork is a means to camouflage the face, where I'm very fair-skinned, and cork is a natural, cheaper alternative to face paint. It's easy to wash off, and it gets the job done. So I applied some cork, applied it liberally to my face, and just kind of rubbed it in, put my helmet on, and then we just tested those, and that worked phenomenally.
Yeah, absolutely. And our sort of rationale behind that is a lot of you guys who are watching. I mean, if you're attending a big milsim and stuff, you absolutely might paint your face using military camo face paint and stuff. But the vast majority of airsofters who are going for a weekend skirmish, you're not going to be like buying face paint for that. You're not going to be covering up using full layers of face paint. But even just having a cork, and as you'll see in the video, burning off a little bit of it and covering up just your cheekbones, the bridge of your nose, a little bit on your forehead, maybe around the back of your ears, is enough to make a significant difference.
Definitely.
Right?
We also utilize camouflage scarves and just other neck coverings. So you'll see shimogs on the table here. They're a great option for protecting your neck against BBs, but for a concealment device, these two in particular, no bueno, not good. Just because they don't fit our color palette that we're operating in.
So next we have a question from Jeff Powells. Jeff asks us, when we're transitioning to our offside, is it necessary to switch our hands, or can you just keep your hands the same but just switch shoulders? You totally can do that. That's simply called bumping your shoulders. In the real steel world, there's lots of shooters who do that. In the airsoft world, we prefer to switch our hands over. We find, firstly, it's more comfortable, but also when you bump your stock but keep everything the same, your hands are in a weird position, it's harder to manipulate your rifle. So if you respond to a threat really quickly, but then you need to respond to another threat, you might not be able to manipulate the rifle the way you need to in order to be as accurate and as consistent as you are. So we like to practice basically just shooting on our strong side, switching shoulders, and switching everything at the same time. That way it's exact mirror one or the other, and you're just as consistent on both sides and just as effective. But at the end of the day, it's also about what's comfortable for you. If you find it's more comfortable to bump and you're playing in a CQB environment maybe, and you're only going to do this for 10 seconds, you can certainly fill your boots. But for our money, it's much more effective to train shooting on your strong side. And when you're shooting on your off side, you're doing the exact same thing, just on the other side. So thanks very much for the question, Jeff. As always, guys, if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer on video, please leave them in the comments below. We read all the comments and we'd love to answer your questions. So we've talked about, the covering up your hands, covering up your skin, utilizing a bit of cork to, flush out some of your highlights and so on. But there's also the piece around, we've alluded to it a little bit, is the natural environment that you're in. So first off, you can be wearing the best camo, you could be totally scrimmed up, you could have your face completely painted, and that's not going to make a lick of difference if you're standing in front of something that doesn't actually suit the camo you're wearing for. So we know that, in airsoft, you're not always going to have the luxury of being able to take cover where, the best place is going to be for your camo. But if you're actively trying to conceal yourself, you're going to want to pick areas that actually match your camo. So that's a very important part.
Definitely.
But the second piece, I think, is what you alluded to at the start, is that the king of camo is natural vegetation. And if you've watched videos from like sniper school where the snipers are, making their ghillie suits and they're taking all this time to put natural vegetation and foliage in their suits, it's a critical part of concealment. But we're not going to go and scrim up our entire bodies with natural foliage the way a sniper does. Like, that's not what airsoft, unless you're an airsoft sniper, in which case, again, do what you got to do. But for the average airsofter, the average sort of rifleman, so to speak, how are we going to utilize some of this foliage? Like, what are we going to do in order to conceal ourselves a bit more using foliage?
So some of the things that we kind of hit on earlier is finding a camouflage that works in your environment. So if you're operating in a green woodland environment, green camouflage is king. Pair that with some natural foliage, and also using cover effectively. So there's no sense of going into like a ditch or something with a big rock face behind you if you're all scrimmed up, because you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. If you just move over a few feet to your right or left and there's some trees there, move over there, utilize that natural camouflage with your artificial camouflage and foliage, and that's a match made in heaven right there.
So what are some of the ways that on the day of, we actually stuffed some foliage like in our camouflage, like in our helmets and stuff, right? So describe how we went around that and actually how really easy that is. Like, it's not a huge ordeal.
Yeah, so I definitely seen a lot of people with helmet bands. So like they have sometimes they have the cat size reflectors on the back for NVGs and thermals. So those act as a foliage band used pretty extensively in the Vietnam War, where people would stuff like bug spray or something. But that's not applicable to airsoft. But you can just take that same principle, stuff foliage in there. That's what we did with Phil's fast helmet and my Second World War pod up there. Just utilizing Phil's helmet cover, so the M81 cover with natural foliage, totally worked really effectively. Where mine's an olive drab base with a brown net and various colors of scrim. Pair that with that helmet band and some natural foliage. Super effective, works every single time. You just have to be utilizing the cover that's around you smartly, and you have to just kind of think one step ahead and just make that effort to conceal yourself.
And, be conscious of it working the other way too. Like, if you think about, taking your helmet band and you stuff all this grass inside, while you're in the grass, that's really effective. But if you then come to the brim of like a little bit of a ridge or something, all that is sticking up above your helmet. If you're not conscious and aware of that, people will see sort of this grass moving along the ridge. Yeah. I wonder what that could be, because the grass isn't moving by itself, right? Yeah. So you need to be conscious of that too.
Definitely.
Right?
And we do play a lot of like urban environments where scrim and natural foliage is just not a good option, because your scrim is out to here and you're coming around a corner. By the time your face and rifle are out, you're seen a mile away, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. To do a full recap of what we talked about so far, and number one is, if you're going to wear camo, take the time to cover up your hands and to at least conceal your face as best as you can. So wear a helmet, or something on your head that covers up as much as your forehead as possible, and then scrim that up as well to sort of break up the outline as best you can. If you want to take a step further, make sure that you're wearing a little bit of cork or some sort of face paint on your face to break up your highlights on your face. And then the third piece is around using your natural vegetation to blend into the environment that you're in and being aware of, whether it's going to be effective or not. So as Johnny was just saying, if you're in an urban environment but you look like a bush, it's probably not going to work really well. So then you use all of that and you combine it with your good concealment fundamentals around, being steady, being still, not moving around too much. And at the same time as we're talking right now, we're going to be showing you some video where Johnny and I sort of hid in the frame. And we're actually there. You can see us. But we're going to start moving, and as soon as we move, you'll be able to see where we are, even though our camouflage is very, very effective. And that's really to drive home the point around camouflage really works when you're still, but if you're moving around, then that's when people are going to spot you. And the reality is, airsoft is about moving around. It's a game of angles, it's a game of objectives, right? So you're going to have to be moving, so the level of achievable concealment you can get from your camouflage is really going to be mitigated by that.
Definitely.
I think the very last thing we want to recognize is there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different camo patterns. There's some notable exceptions that we didn't hit, when we were looking at this stuff, because either we didn't have access to them or we weren't just going to go out and buy them for this video. But if you look at, the AOR patterns, if you look at the Cryptek Highlander patterns, we didn't look at most of the Russian patterns like Flora, and there's a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, like the SS Partisan Leo. Yeah. There's a whole slew of camouflages that look equally as cool, but we just didn't have access to them.
Yeah.
So we took the available camouflages that we had, and we thought that looked cool, and we wanted to see just how effective they really were. So, take all these things with a grain of salt and contrast the results that you saw on the screen here with your actual environment that you're operating in.
Yeah. And to answer the question, that we pose with this video, which is what is the best airsoft camouflage, right? What is the most effective camouflage for airsoft? The answer is whatever you got, as long as you're using it intelligently, right? Not alpenflage, obviously. But if you're taking the time to scrim up your camouflage, to utilize natural vegetation, you can make really a lot of these patterns work for you and be very effective.
Definitely. So there's, like we said earlier, there's no one blanket camouflage that is the be-all, end-all. Even though they're advertised as such, like you said, Multicam was the gear, but way back when. Mm-hmm. And you'll see in the video, it's not really the case now.
That's right. So guys, we hope you like this video. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.